welcome back to Daddy Lessons with Daisha D. I know I am a week behind. Please forgive me. We give grace here. Honestly, I was finishing up the rest of my summer vacation before the school year started back, so just trying to get back into the swing of things pretty much. Um, this is my this is one of my first episodes without a guest. How are y'all enjoying those episodes, by the way? I want to know your thoughts, or if you can relate to it, if you have questions. Interact in the comments, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or YouTube, especially TikTok. I will talk back. I will communicate with you, because I really do want to know, who is this show reaching, and what topics do you find interesting? What topics do you think I should touch more on that I haven't spoken about? I mean, we just got started, so there's a whole lot to cover. But today, I kind of wanted to take a step back and go back to the episode where I had one of my best friends, Cassandra, on. And she talked a lot about her teenage years and dating men. And I put air quotes over dating because a child cannot consent to dating an adult. But one thing it's something that we often hear, and I think she even said it. If you haven't watched that episode, pause this and watch that episode and then come back. But I think she said it on there about how older adults, Black adults, would refer to her as being fast or grown or whatnot. And honestly, I don't know how often that happens in other communities. But I know in the Black community, it happens fairly often, mostly with girls. So you'll see a little girl, she might be showing they'll think she's showing too much skin in what she's wearing, or they'll say she's too sassy. She's being grown, or she's being fast. They'll say fast when they feel like she is garnering the attention of a lot of young men, but a lot of times it's when they think she's going to garner the attention of adult men. And I think as a kid, you're indoctrinated with it, right? So you do think like, oh, she's being grown, she's being fast because we're in middle school and her boyfriend is picking her up after school. And so you start to learn that what's taking place between that teenager and that adult is on the kid. It's the kid's responsibility, when in reality, that girl or that boy is being preyed on. So I did look up some statistics, because I kind of knew already, because I work in the educational system, and so we have a lot of trainings that give you all of these stats, and I didn't think it had changed much. So it says that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys in the US are estimated to experience child sexual abuse. When you add on other factors, poverty being a huge one, that number increases, right? You start to see it a lot more often. I think when I was younger, as a kid, people talk to you like, don't talk to strangers, and don't go in that white work van that's coming passing off your candy, right? But a lot of times, the people that abuse you, right, are more than likely going to be someone that you know, which is a scary thought, because think about it. If you have a single mother, she has multiple kids, she's working, school gets out at 3. 9 times out of 10, she's not off from work. She may need someone to babysit those kids. And you're trusting this adult to keep your kids safe. And sometimes there are situations where they don't. And if something does happen and that child comes to you and says, I feel uncomfortable with this person, ask questions, probe. Don't assume that your child is being dramatic or theatrical, because most kids are not going to lie about that. I know in my line of work, unfortunately, I have run into a lot of kids, both boys and girls, who have dealt with predators, whether the predators were in the house with them, in the family, at school, just they've dealt with it. And I will say, in most of those situations, when the child was non-black, I did not hear the parents or people say they're grown. He's being fast, she's being fast. But when it was a little black girl or a little black boy, it was she smelling herself. She doing a lot. And oftentimes black children are not given the opportunity to be children. Kind of like what me and Trey were talking about on his episode. Black kids are not allowed to be black kids. A lot of times they are adultified. And if you're adultifying a child, that means you're literally looking at them as an adult and you are holding them to a certain maturity level, responsibility level, and emotional level when they're really just a kid. And I know that may seem small to some or minor to some, but it then turns into something much larger systemically. Follow me. If you have a young girl, young black girl, let's say she is 9, and she's in a home where she's the oldest, mom works, and so by the time her and her siblings get home, she kind of takes on this caretaking role. Should she be? No, but that is the circumstance that she's in. Okay, so she's taking on this caretaker role, and you're already parentifying her. That's the start. And then let's say that she finally gets an opportunity to be a kid, to explore, to go outside, have fun, things like that. She goes to a friend's sleepover, and that friend has an older brother who happens to be there. And that older brother is like 18, 19. And he violates that 9-year-old girl. And at that point, the way that she thinks uh will shift, right? She might become, from what I've seen and what I do, she might become really closed off, not want to talk, want to be really covered up. Or I've seen it the other way, where you'll have a girl who's dealt with sexual trauma and she's in middle school, and all of a sudden now she's exploring with a lot of her peers at school. And in those situations, of course, people who are not, it's easy, it's a throwaway word, right, to say like, oh, she's fast, she's grown, she just need to be whooped, she got daddy issues. There goes that word again. um But oftentimes when that is happening, 9 times out of 10, she has something in her history that can speak to why she is exploring with different peers. I'm gonna pause here because there will be people that's like, well, teenagers, they hormones are going crazy and they want to explore. Fair. It's one thing for teenagers to explore with themselves or one other teenager. It's another thing when you've noticed a pattern. Um, and that's when you can consider having a deeper conversation versus just saying, you know what, she's being grown, she's being fast, because it that's too simple. That's too simple of an answer for that to be the answer, or the cause of why she's doing what she's doing. And a lot of times, going back to the 9-year-old, um, in that kind of situation, oftentimes families will protect the brother, the cousin, the dad, stepdad, uncle, whoever, to the point where, and I know a lot for a lot of you out there, um, women, when you were little girls, especially in the Black community, you were told like, "Oh, you can't wear that. Uncle so and so is coming over. You don't sit on no man lap. You know, you you don't do that. Make Go put on some longer pants. Go put on a big t-shirt." And you're already teaching the girls specifically that they need to be doing the changing. They need to alter their appearance and doing these things to ensure that this grown ass man isn't attracted to her or wanting her based on what she has on. I don't care what any child is wearing. There is no part of any adult that's going to be attracted to a child unless they are attracted to a child. However, oftentimes, just as a society, we tend to protect predators. I mean, look at R. Kelly. I would say P. Diddy, but his is just so all over the place. But like with R. Kelly, I mean, there was video evidence of him being with children. There's like he married Aaliyah when she was a teenager. There's evidence of these things since what, the 90s, the early 2000s, and this man just got locked up. Why? He had a lot of people protecting him, from the people in his camp, from, they claim, local police officers allegedly protecting him, because I guess money talks. And unfortunately, a lot of girls and young women had to suffer for years and years until they were able to, get some kind of justice, I guess. But my point is, when we don't allow children to be children, we tend to rush to put them in to this adultified role. And even though we know that this is just a child, the outside world may not see them as that, and that causes them to have less empathy for them. And it goes beyond just the sexualizing of children, right? It goes into young boys when they're out and about. I just saw a video from back home where, and I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. So Atlanta has water boys, Charleston has rose boys. And with rose boys, they're taking palmetto leaves and they're crafting these roses and they sell them. I mean, you'll see them all over, mostly downtown near the market, because it's a lot of tourist traffic and, they make their money. But anyway, he was this teenager was selling palmetto roses outside of a gas station. And I guess he went inside the gas station to like cool off because it is hot. Uh, and this palm colored woman decided to call the police and say that he was like stealing or messing with goods or something like that. Police came. Next thing you know, he's on the ground. He's terrified. He's telling them like, "Please, no, 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 no. I didn't do anything. I'm selling roses." He's scared, and he has every right to be. Why? Because a lot of times when you go on social media or you look at the news, you will see young boys that look like him or men that look like him who are guilty just because they're black. And they're in a space where 9 times out of 10, a palm colored person doesn't want them to be. Again, that goes back to adultifying him. He's a child. He's selling roses. I would rather him be selling roses than doing something than selling something illegal. And then when you look at, and that's just out in the world, right? But then let's put this into a school situation. If these kids are being adultified and they're in school, 9 times out of 10, they're gonna be more likely to get suspended. So the more you're suspended, the more you're out of school, you're missing classwork, you don't pass these state exams, you don't go on to the next grade, or maybe you do, you go to summer school. But the more that you're missing of school, the less interested and engaged you are. And with the climate of our country right now, schools have become very, very strict on their discipline protocols. So a lot of the school shootings that happen, it's gotten to a point where they're like a zero tolerance. Honestly, I think it's across the country, but a child could bring a water gun to school that looks like a water gun and be expelled. And if you don't believe me, Google it. It's free. Google is free. So again, if you're taking a kid who's in an environment where he doesn't have a lot of supervision because his parent or parents are simply trying to survive, pay the bills, and so they're really hoping and putting that responsibility on that kid to get to school. Kids are going to make mistakes, and because they're immature and they're learning. But if they come to school and they bring a water gun, or they are playing horse playing, they get suspended, and those things continue to happen. Now, again, they've missed all the school. They've been labeled as a problem child. Because I promise you, every school year that comes around, when those teachers get their roster, and if they see a kid on their roster that is known to like constantly get in trouble, they don't want to be bothered. They roll their eyes, and right there is where like that agitation already starts before the child even gets in the building. It could be a whole new school year, and they're like, "Oh, I got to deal with this kid," and so they may not have as much patience with that particular kid as they would another. I remember there was a rumor years ago where it was said that prisons were being built based on the testing scores of third graders. It was a rumor, but it brought up a conversation about the school to prison pipeline, which is a real thing. Because once again, I work in the school system. If a child becomes truant, which means they've missed a certain amount of days of school, right? And the school has tried to connect with their family, whether that's going out to the house or checking in with that child, just trying to implement different interventions to re-engage that child and that family into the school, and nothing is working, you have something called truancy court, where we have to collect how many absences, any behavioral issues, grades, all of these things, is stacks and stacks and stacks of documents, right? We'll call it discovery. And you go into court, and then that judge, because now at that point is no longer in the hands of the school, it's now up to the juvenile court. And so then they get to decide what happens next. I've seen kids be put on ankle monitors because of absences from school. Do I agree with that? No. But it has happened. And if you are already, because we already have schools that have school police officers, right? Most schools have at least one school police officer. And if it's what they deem a high need school, they probably have about 2, 3, 4 sometimes school police officer. So, okay, they already have them there. And 9 times out of 10, they're interacting with the kids only when it's a behavioral issue, not when it's just like, hey, I'm Officer White. And, I'm here as a listening ear, mentor. What 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. I applaud those who do that, but a lot of times that's not how it goes. Right? They're there to ensure that you are following the directions and you are not, and that everyone is safe, right? But they have the officers there. You have some schools that have metal detectors. They're trying to do that even more. A lot of schools now, once again, because of the school shootings, they have like double security. So before you can even get into the building, you have a camera, an intercom, and they're going to ask, who are you? You need to hold your ID up. Then you come in. There's another door that's locked. You come in. And then when you go into those front offices or just that area, you'll see a TV with cameras. And it just shows you cameras of the entire building. I'm a millennial. Okay. When I was in school, I do not recall having like a TV where it showcased cameras all around the building. Like that is the welcoming, right? To let you know we see you. Then you got the school police officer. And you have security guards. This is where I struggle with this, right? Because on one hand, you want everyone to be safe and you want to feel safe, right? And so having the multiple security measures at the door and having the school police officer, the security guards, it makes you feel like you're safe. But on the other hand, it's like I feel like it desensitizes the kids, especially when they hear that their homeboy has an ankle monitor because he wasn't coming to school. Or just the fact that you're going to court at all because you didn't come to school. Oftentimes, people in my district will make a comparison between the North schools and the South schools, right? The North schools, they tend to have a lot of donors and their buildings are new and nice. They'll have a lot of great guest speakers, sometimes celebrities that come who may have attended that school or have a child that attends that school. A lot of times when they have like behavioral challenges, that's what they're called, behavioral challenges. And then they'll say, well, I think it's, it might be his depression, his anxiety, or, something's going on at home. Kids up north are given consideration or space to consider that something deeper could be going on, right? When you come to the dirty side. Okay, that's where I work. That's my comfort zone. That's what I'm used to. It doesn't bother me. Other people are like, I don't know how y'all do it, but I like it. I like it. I work in those types of schools because a lot of times they are majority kids of color, black kids specifically, and I have always wanted black kids to see people that look like them, that didn't allow their childhood traumas or their current environment to be their story, just a part of it. But anyway, but in the South, oftentimes when a child has a behavioral problem, one or two things happens. A, this is a badass kid, right? He or she is going to get suspended, so much to the point where they're going to then get sent to an alternative school, which we'll come back to that. Or they'll say, okay, this child, maybe they got ADHD, or they have some type of ADHD, or they have something, right? And then they medicate them to better deal with them. For the first half of those kids who end up going to alternative school, which is a lot more than you would think, those alternative schools they're not on the same curriculum as their home school, right? So now this child is there for a semester, some kids for an entire school year. And although their behavior might improve, why? Because they're in a smaller setting, uniform, and it's just more controlled, they're behind academically. So by the time they do return to their home school, they're trying to play catch up. If you were already a child that was constantly suspended, that means you were already behind 9 times out of 10, correct? So you're already behind. Then you go to alternative school for a semester or for a full academic year, you're even more behind. You're like 2 grade levels behind where you're supposed to be. And what happens when you come back to your home school? You're not going to be as engaged. You might continue to get in trouble, or you try to play catch up, you are passed along, but you're not really absorbing what it is that you're not really taking in what you're supposed to be getting, right? At that point, it's like just you're there to be babysat. The kids who may be diagnosed with ADHD, for example, because a lot of time I want to say that it's black boys that tend to be diagnosed with that at a higher rate than their white counterparts. Girls aren't diagnosed as early, just socially girls tend to mask it a little more. But yeah, they'll say, okay, well, this kid is hard to deal with, so we're going to put him in smaller settings. We're going to medicate him for this. Without really digging deeper. And if you're already, once again, going back to that being impoverished, education level may be lower, and you may not feel empowered to advocate for your child. So you kind of just go along with it because you're like, okay, well, the school is saying this, so let me just follow, what it is that they're saying. You see how far and deep we got into this domino effect from simply adultifying a child? Because it doesn't begin and end with how they dress or them having a smart mouth. That carries on into other spaces and impacts them. So I say all of this to say that we have to remember to allow our kids to be kids. No, I do not have any children yet, but we do have to remember to allow our kids to be kids because society does not. There are ways to combat that, right? But it has to start with you because what we don't want is for a kid to feel like they have to do all the things that they shouldn't be doing to get the attention of the adults um, in their lives. I wanted to see if there was another stat here. Hmm. No, I think I pretty much covered what I wanted to cover, but um, let me know in the comments uh, what you thought about this episode. Do you feel like you were given the space to be a kid, or do you feel like people refer to you as fast or grown? And what does that mean to you? Because also I'll see pictures that people will post of their kids like first day of school, and then people in the comments will be like, "This is too grown of an outfit." So let me know. Are you allowing your kids to be kids? Were you allowed to just be a child, make mistakes, and not be referred to as being grown or fast? And do you now understand why labeling children with the giving children those labels is problematic? Now, my little pushback, because I feel like there will be some people that'll say, well, some kids are just bad, or some kids are just uh too grown and they need to stay in a child's place. My question for you is, how did we get here? How did they get to that point? I think I will end with that. um, I will be back uh my normal schedule every other week. Um, let me know how you feel. Let me know your thoughts below. I will respond. I promise you. Um, and add to the conversation as well. Like, what is something I didn't touch on that you feel like would have would have added to it? I want to hear your perspective. I have been Daisha D, and this is Daddy Lessons. Join us every other week for a new episode and become a part of the Daddy Lessons podcast community because everyone has a story and every story deserves to be heard.